As you might have noticed, there have been number of cases where Desi small company owners have been arrested and they have been sentenced for long terms and they have been charged hefty fines for their involvement in H1B visa fraud. So this is where the problem needs to be addressed. Now imagine this, if there is a dead rat in the house, okay, and that dead rat is creating a lot of foul smell, what is the solution for it? Would you just spray some perfume around your nose, or will you remove that dead rat? Now remember, an alive rat is still a menace, but it does not create a foul smell, right? So the correct solution is to get the dead rat out of your home. No matter how much you spray yourself, it is only going to give temporary relief. The problem is here to stay. Similarly, fixing H1B regulations and asking for more green cards is nothing different. It is just like spraying to reduce the foul smell temporarily. So what is the real problem? I will expose that today. But before we go any further, we have to recognize what is the core objective of a company. What are the key objectives for any company in the US? So let us look at the key objectives of any company, okay? The number one objective for any company around the world, it doesn't matter, is to be profitable, okay, and improve their profit margins. You can actually be profitable if your business volume is very high. So even if you are making smaller profits from each transaction, the summation of all the profits can be high. And the other way is to improve profit margins. If you cannot grow your business all that much, you can increase the profit margin based on your expenses, okay, and that will make you more profitable. Now, the second key objective, therefore, is for companies to reduce their expenses and costs, okay. The moment you are able to reduce your expenses, if your revenue does not even increase that much, you will still be more profitable, okay. And the third objective is to improve operational efficiency. And for you to improve your operational efficiency, the first step is to innovate better and faster than your competitors. Innovation is the key. Are you getting your products faster and better than your competitors? And then companies must focus on their core competence to be able to do that, okay? If you are a car maker, you cannot focus on software development if your core objective is to make better cars, right? Similarly, whatever product you are making, your core objective is to improve your efficiency when it comes to your core competence, okay? And this is where the real problem starts to come. This is different in case of IT firms. If you take any FAANG company, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, any of those big companies, their core competence is technology itself. But for the most of the companies that actually benefit from H1B employment are not all these tech companies, all right? There are railroad companies, transportation companies, there are different kinds of manufacturing companies all over the country. They all need IT services, and IT services are not their core competence. Their core competence is in something else altogether. And this is where costs and expenses come in, and they become so important. Now, what are the costs and expenses for any company? First is your capital costs and expenses, and these capital costs like setting up a warehouse or any such thing, okay, and these are usually 10 to 30% of your expenses, okay. Just look at this example. Let us say you are a shoe manufacturing company. Your capital investments could be more or less the same regardless of the country where you make your factory. Even if you make your factory in China versus the US, the costs are different probably, but not all that much. And then the next part is your labor costs and expenses, and these expenses are a bigger proportion. These cost you around 70 to 90% of your expenses. For the sake of simplicity, let us assume that these are the only expenses that companies incur. There could be other variety of expenses such as the legal expenses or the regulatory expenses, taxes. Let us not get into all of that. These two are the biggest expenses that companies incur. Now, the feature about capital costs and expenses is that they are relatively stable and infrequent. If you need to make a warehouse for your production, it is for the most part one-time expense, and the maintenance expenses for these are relatively low for the most part, okay? However, the labor costs and expenses tend to be very high for companies, and these are recurrent such that you have to keep on paying, and the frequency is very high because you have to pay monthly salaries to your employees, right? And this is where the costs and expenses can be differentiated, where costs are usually the salaries and benefits that you need to pay to your employees, and these benefits can include anything like stock options, health insurance, your retirement benefits, and all such things. And these are the costs that companies have to incur. And the other portion of expenses is your relocation expenses, for example, and then you have your visa sponsorship. Okay. Now, the problem comes here is that companies want to avoid paying all these benefits, stock options, health insurance, retirement, relocation, and visa sponsorship, especially if the person working is not working in that company's core operations. Okay. If you're a manufacturing company, your IT worker is not necessarily a part of your core operations. Okay. And now, regardless of these costs and expenses, one thing that you cannot avoid is paying salaries. Even if you hire a contractor, you still have to pay them their monthly salary, right? And it does not have to be monthly salary, it could be your hourly charges and whatever not. So this portion is unavoidable, but these other expenses and costs, companies try to avoid them so that they can eventually maximize their profit. Okay. And what is the technique that they use to avoid these expenses? Is they hire a contractor. Okay. And the contractors again can be of two types. One is the Desi contractor. Usually this is the kind of contractor that companies outsource their IT work to, and these could be big companies, any big company, let's say from India like Infosys, Wipro, or any such company. However, a lot of small to medium companies, medium-sized companies in particular, actually hire American contractor companies. And what happens when you want to hire a contractor, because you want to cut down on costs and because you think that the contractor is going to work for you only temporarily, you approach these American contractors, and these American contractors may or may not have employees ready to take those positions. But guess what? American contractors also want to make money, right? They are staffing companies. So what do? They look for other contractors who they can use from other companies. And this is where Desi contractor companies come in, and these are usually small contractor companies. And now we are getting into the zone of legal and moral issues. And what do these Desi contractor companies, especially the smaller contractor companies, tend to do? As you might have noticed, there have been a number of cases where Desi small company owners have been arrested, and they have been sentenced for long terms, and they have been charged hefty fines for their involvement in H1B visa fraud. So this is where the problem needs to be addressed. Okay, now what these Desi small contractors are doing, I'm not saying all of them are, but many of them have been involved in such cases where this Desi small contractor needs to hire employees so that they can also make money, right? And these are usually the people who came early enough so that they've already got their green cards and citizenships, and then they use their strong immigration status in this country to exploit others. Now, what is happening here is that the Desi small contractor, they actually need to bring people to place in those, eventually in those big American clients, right? Or at least the medium-sized American clients. What they do to bring those people is to fake projects to bring people. You cannot file for H1B unless you have a project for the person to work on. So they will just make something up saying that this is the kind of work we already have for this person, and this person will be working in such and such project, and therefore we are hiring them. That may or may not be true, and a lot of such cases have been exposed where there were no real projects. They were just using that excuse to bring those people so that they can later place them through an American contractor to eventually an American client. Now, another illegal and immoral thing that these Desi contractors are involved in, I'm not saying all of them, but many of them have been caught, is that they charge for H1B filing. Now, if you are sponsoring an employee for an H1B visa, it is your job to pay for their application fee. It is illegal to charge a person for their own application fee. Okay, and this is another crime that is being committed in a large scale, at least the way it has been exposed. Now, the third portion of this illegal work is that these Desi contractors are able to pay, because remember, these Desi contractors are just normal people. They just set up a company for the namesake, and then they are using their status or registration to place those employees. Now, if you are a company, as so they claim, you need to pay their paychecks regularly, right? But because these Desi contractors are trying to place these people, they do not have any money to pay them because they make money only when the end American client pays for their hourly charges, right? So what they do is that they keep them on bench and keep looking for projects for these people, okay? And even if they pay very low salaries, okay, because an American client pays to an American contractor, the American contractor then takes the cut and then pays to the Desi contractor, and the Desi contractor then further takes their own cut, and then eventually the salary is paid to that end employee, okay? And this is where the real problem comes. So who is really responsible for this whole problem? First of all, these are the American companies, okay? These are the biggest culprits, if you will, because if they really want the work to be done, hire employees. You can get rid of those employees, but they do not want to hire employees, okay? And they are trying to maximize their profit by not wanting to pay for those benefits. And because of this corporate greed, where the top management is trying to maximize their profit so that they can take a bigger cut, this corporate greed alone is eventually responsible for this H1B visa misuse. And who are the other responsible parties? It is the end contractor and H1B. Now, all these end contractor employees who are on H1B know what they are doing. They were the ones who actually paid to that Desi consultancy, right? They were not forced to pay. It is their own small greed to work in the US and earn in dollars that is leading to the situation. But these people are not as responsible as these people are. And think about it. Why has so much manufacturing moved out of America to China and other countries? Because the labor costs in those countries are cheaper. And when the labor costs are cheaper, the profits are maximized. And who do these profits go to? The top management of those companies, right? So it is the greed that has driven out manufacturing out of the US. Similarly, it is only the greed that is leading to this H1B crisis. And these are the two parties who operate on greed, and then they are taken advantage of by those middlemen, okay? Those American contracting companies and those Desi consultancies. And this is where the whole problem comes from. What is the solution to this problem? Okay, I will give a detailed solution, at least my solution to this problem, in my next video. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind and God bless America.